You're a plumber, okay.
But we maintain some of the irrigation valves.
Okay, so maybe a quick overview of what we got out here. Right now what we have is we have an irrigation clock sitting over there. It's what we call an assembly, which means it's an irrigation clock that's inside of a strong box. Strong box is kind of the Kleenex of the stainless steel boxes in our industry. So you have what is called the top mount box. So you open up the door and then the controller, it doesn't matter what brand it is, but in this particular case it's our brand that's presented. And then everything's encased inside. That clock is locked with a key. It also has a padlock hasp underneath if you want to padlock it, which I would assume you probably would with as many people that are walking around here, because the key is a fairly typical key. It's a Rainbird 751, so everybody has access to it. The clock itself has an antenna on the outside of the box that gives us our cell signal. These controllers communicate via a cell network. We're with a distributor that has AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile, and the system automatically picks the best signal for the best tower, and that's how we access it. So the thing that makes this unique is it's a conventional irrigation clock, except that it has the ability to communicate on a daily basis to the interface, which is on the web. So unlike some of the other systems that are out there that are computer specific with some hardware and software that has to be loaded, we aren't. We are web based. So anywhere you have access to the internet, you have access to your system. So as long as you have, a password and log on to your account, you can access it from any location, anywhere. It could be home, it could be the office, it could be sitting at Starbucks, it can be on your PC, your laptop, it can be on your tablet, it can be on your phone. We don't care. We have two different websites that are designed for the system. The website you're looking at here is basically our computer website. This is our full-blown access, which gives you all the ability to get on there and modify and tweak and so on. We also have a secondary website which looks like this one. And what I've done here is I've taken a screen and I've minimized it down to kind of minimize and duplicate what it would look like on your phone. So this is a different website you go to on your phone, and this would give you the ability to get on there and manually turn irrigation on and off, suspend irrigation, but you would not have the ability to run the full web system. So if I log in by clicking on the login here on my phone, this is what it looks like on your phone. So whether it's a BlackBerry, a Droid, an iPhone, as long as your phone has internet access, this is what you would see on your phone. And you can use your phone now as a remote control. The advantage of this is we're not talking from the phone to the clock. We're talking from the phone to the clouds, to the servers, to the clouds, to the controller. The advantage is there's no distance restrictions. I don't have to be within eyesight of the controller. I don't have to worry about any kind of obstructions between you and the controller. I can utilize this 10,000 miles away. The speed's the same. So the advantage is you never really need to get up to the clock if you want to do any kind of manual watering. Or if you notice that rain's coming and you don't have a rain sensor on the clock and you want to make sure you don't have irrigation occurring in the rain, or maybe you want to shut it down a day or two ahead of time, you can do that from your phone. You can do it from the website, but you can easily do it from your phone. And from here you can suspend a clock, or you can suspend all your clocks. So if you had, let's say, 5 or 6 controllers on the complex, you don't even have to go through and do it one at a time. You can get into the suspend and say, one, or you can check box them all and say suspend, and within a few seconds every clock is shut down. And you can put them all back on the same way. So it's a real time savings from that standpoint. So any questions as we're talking, just jump in from that standpoint. So what we have here is this is the interface. The way you get to the interface and you already have access is simply go to etwater.com. Set up an email address, which is your password and a password, and then log on to the system. So I'm logged on as Eddie, because Eddie is the distributor for us here in Southern California, and they like to keep an eye on what's going on when the clocks first get installed. So you have a log on, you see what you see, he has a log on, he can see yours plus other people's. So what I've done is I've gone to the site, and a particular site here on this overview is called Midori El Monte Busway. You can change that name, and then you would have a listing of all of your controllers under that. So right now you only have one clock, so you have the one controller here. As you add clocks, they'll come in and they'll automatically be named Smart Controller 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You can go over here and edit that and change the name anytime that you want. So right now, this is the serial number which is locked in. That's what makes this controller unique. It's like your cell phone. Every cell phone has a unique 10-digit phone number. Every one of our devices has a unique 10-digit serial number. That's what you need to have to be able to set it up online. Once you put it online, you never even look at the serial number again. But this is where you can name the controllers. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 clocks around the complex, you may want to give them names that are more specific to where they are located, so that when you're looking at your list of your 5 or 6 clocks, it makes a little better sense to what's going on from that standpoint. So now I click on the controller. Right now I know that it's a 32 station clock. I'm currently using 22 of the 32 stations. And this is kind of the controller overview page. And some of the things that we look at here is, number one, I can see what the water window is set for. So right now the water window is set to run between the hours of 7 at night and 8 at night. That is not typical. Typical water window would be from, let's say, 8 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. So normally you want to get your irrigation done during the evening when there's not a lot of traffic around here, to minimize the amount of overspray if there are areas where you have spraying in parking lots. You want to minimize the amount of pop-ups that people will be kicking off. You want to minimize the amount of water sitting on sidewalks. And typically the water districts also don't want you irrigating, at least spraying water during the day, because you're wasting a lot of the water due to evaporation. So here's where you see the water window. I can see 8 stations at a time on the clock, or I could select all stations and the screen would get long and I could see all the stations from that standpoint. Over here I can see my communication information, so I can see the last time it made a call, and I can see the next time it's set to call. So the last time it made a call was a couple of minutes ago, and I just hit connect now here because I wanted to verify that the thing was communicating fine. So again, I said call. It's going from our servers in Northern California up to the clouds, down to the clock, and it takes, depending on how much data is in the controller, anywhere from maybe 15 to 30 seconds to get all the information to come back and forth, and then it gets offline. Below this I can see the weather information. Right now we are on an El Monte weather station that was automatically set up based on you giving us an address of this location. Our system went out and found the closest weather station to this area, and that becomes your basis for ET, or evapotranspiration. So that's the number we're going to be looking at to determine how much water to put back down on the landscape. As the ET goes up, as you're evaporating more, as you're transpiring more, the plants use more water, we will put more water down. As it gets cooler, the daylight gets shorter, the plants are slowing down their growth, the ET drops, we then adjust the schedules to put down less water. And depending on the method of irrigation you choose to use, we'll do that by cutting down your run times and also by cutting back on your water days. So under a fully automatic system, you'll have a station running maybe in the middle of summer watering every day, every other day if it's turf. That same station in the middle of winter might be running once every 2 or 3 weeks. So we fully adjust it. We don't simply don't adjust the runtime. We adjust the runtime in the day pattern. But there are other methods, as we discussed, and we'll show you that here, that you can also choose if you want to have a little more control over how it's going to irrigate. Okay? You can go to, this happens to be WeatherBug's website. They also have apps for your phone if you like to use those. And we are signed on with WeatherBug weather stations for irrigation purposes. They have about 11,000 weather stations nationwide. So I simply gone onto their website, I brought up their map. Any dot you see on that map is a weather station that we have access to for utilizing for the purposes of our irrigation system. And then over to the right, it even gives you the names of the weather stations from that standpoint. So there are lots and lots of weather stations. As I pull this thing back, you'll see that we're not hurting for weather stations here in Southern California from a standpoint of utilizing those for our irrigation system. So lots of weather stations to utilize. So we're back at the clock. Again, I'm looking at my how big my clock is. I'm looking at the first 8 stations, and what I can look at here as far as the information is, number one, I'm seeing the name of the station. In this case, this one's called Drip, Adidas, Bubblers, and so on. You're allowed to define that. I'm looking at the last time it's irrigated, the next time it's going to irrigate, what the actual program is. So right now this thing is running twice a day. It's running every day. It's running for 15 minutes, and it's putting it down as one 15-minute cycle. If this was a spray head area where it puts the water down quickly, we would consider the application rate of the sprinkler, the soil type, and we would break that up into multiple short cycles to try to prevent runoff from occurring. The way you read this is, this day is a little darker, this is today or tonight. This is what's going to happen. And the way you read it is, if there's a drop on that day, on that station, it's watering that station tonight. If I see one of these, this means that I've blocked irrigation from occurring on these stations, which means it can't irrigate on these days because you've blocked it. That could be a mow day, that could be weekends. I mean, you don't want irrigation to run out here on the weekends because there's nobody around to fix stuff. It could be whatever the case happens to be. If there was a symbol here that had just an open square with nothing in it, that means that's the day that I could water if I needed to. I'm choosing not to. So on normal systems, you would see a lot of open days where it's saying, hey, I don't need to water every day because I watered today, or I'm watering tonight, I don't need to water for the next couple of days. And then the only other symbol you would see here would be a little hand. And the hand means that is a day that you suspended. That means it's not a day that's blocked every week. It just means, hey, the rain's coming, or I'm having an event, and I want to shut it down for a couple of days. You would see hands there for the days that you've suspended, and then it would automatically come out of the suspension when it's done and start watering again from that standpoint. So again, so there's my first 8 days that are there. The other things you can do is you can obviously suspend. So you have a list of your commands across the top. I can suspend, I can block days, I can adjust my water window, I can go into establishment schedules. So establishment schedules are typically used for overseeding areas, or when you first lay sod down or seed, we want to get multiple stations, multiple starts every day to keep it damp during the daylight hours. And then you also have restrictions. There are some water districts that are very fussy about when you can water, what days you can water, every third day, every odd day, and so on. So we've had to put that into the schedule to satisfy the various water districts and their oddball kind of restrictions from that standpoint. So we're going to go to an empty station here on the clock, so I'm going to select all stations. And you can see these stations here have not been configured. This is how the clock comes. It comes blank. Nothing's been done. So I'm going to take the last station on the clock, 32, and I'm going to use that as kind of a dummy station to screw around with it. And then when we're done, we can delete it. But that'll allow us to play around with it. So the way you program the system or set it up initially is you go to the station and you configure it. We kind of force you to do this even if you want to just run it your own way. The reason is we want to get station parameters in the database so that if you ever decide to flip things around, the data is already there, you don't have to remember what it was, and you can also run reports that'll show you what's going on. So right now I'm looking at station number 32. Obviously you need to give the station a name. Some people will call it 32 or station 32. It makes better sense if you can make the station name a little descriptive, because when you're looking at a list, it helps you a little bit if it's maybe an area that describes the location or what it's doing or whatever the case happens to be. You have about 17 characters here on this line to mess around with. The field below that is the station description. This can be basically a notepad. So you can go ahead and you can make this you can use as much as you want here. A lot of people will use this as a history of the station. So every time they do something, you've gone out there and replaced the diaphragm on the valve, you replaced a broken wire, you put a new solenoid in, whatever, you can go ahead and put a date in what you did, and this will stay with this station forever. So it becomes a history of everything you've done on this project back to day one. You can also get more descriptive here as to what you're irrigating. This is the acacias with the Rainbird deep well rooting system with a 1 gallon per minute bubbler, blah blah blah. So you can be very, very descriptive here because you have basically no limitation to how much stuff you can put into the station description area. Okay. So for the sake of argument, we're going to call this station 32. And I'm not going to put any information here for the description. And then you have, in essence, 3 different ways to initially irrigate or set it up. You can either use what we call the step-by-step method, which is cute. It'll give you little pretty pictures that you simply click the icons as you go through. Or once you've done it once, you'll either use the advanced method where you get everything on one screen, you simply check off the answers to the questions and you're done. Or the third way is if you have stations that are identical, you just copy. So if you went through and you set up station number 1, which are the bubblers and the palm trees, and you have another station on the other side of the project which is exactly the same, instead of having to go through and enter all the information a second time, you can just copy that information over. And that saves you all the hassle of having to program it from that standpoint. There's also a feature in here that if you wanted, if you have 5 or 6 or a bunch of stations that are identical, instead of making one and copying it, you can actually program all 5 at the same time. So if you're in a sports field and every station's doing the exact same thing, instead of having to copy, you can select all the stations ahead of time, program one, and they're all done from that standpoint. So there's lots of things you can do here to make your life a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to use the step-by-step method just to show you what it looks like. In the step-by-step method, you simply answer the questions that it's asking you, and it's asking you based on the words and the pictures. So it's saying, step number 1, what kind of irrigation method? Select the irrigation method that you're using on station number 32. So is it a sprinkler, is it a bubbler, is it drip system, is it subsurface, is it road, whatever the case happens to be. And then when you answer the questions, it typically will take you to a sub-menu. Like I said, sprinkler. So it said, fine, what kind of sprinkler? Is it a pop-up spray head? Is it a rotating rotor? Is it an impact? What does it happen to be? So the step-by-step method takes you through screen by screen by screen, and you answer the questions. This is really for people that don't know irrigation very well. Somebody that knew the irrigation, this is how you do it. The right side of the screen always has text-sensitive help that'll describe what it's asking you. So as an example, I may not know what a spray head is versus a rotor versus an impact and so on, so it describes them. A spray head is a little sprinkler that pops up and down, it's got a fixed nozzle, sprays, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So I'm going to back up here and I'm going to go to the advanced method. I'm going to say, no, I don't want to use the step-by-step. I want to use the advanced method. And the advanced method is the same stuff, except it's presenting everything on one screen. So let's go ahead and we're going to program station 32, and you can think of one of your valves here and you can give me the answers to how I'm programming this station. So in your head, pick a station in your mind and we're going to program it. So the first thing it's going to ask us for is, how are we irrigating this?
Okay, you say bubblers.
Okay, so we come in here and say bubblers. And then it's going to refresh the screen. It's going to say, okay, how many gallons per hour is it? Now the default there is a 1 gallon per minute bubbler, which is 60 gallons an hour. But you may have half gallon a minute bubblers.
Yeah, I got 2 quarter gallons, so it'll be half gallon.
Well, again, it's going to ask you for how many bubblers a minute. So what is the one bubbler putting out? 15 gallons an hour. That would be...
If that's what it comes out to?
Yeah. So that's 15 gallons per hour. Then it says, okay, what are you watering?
Palm trees.
So we'll say trees, palms. And then it says, is it brand new planted or it's established? Now I'm going to say established because I want you to see the scheduling.
Okay.
If I say newly planted, it goes right back to that establishment schedule, which we don't want to mess around with right now, because you don't want to water every day.
Right.
So we're going to say it's established. Then it's going to say, okay, what is the root depth? Now it has a default. The defaults vary by whatever the questions that you've answered are. You said palm tree, so it's defaulting the root system being 2 feet. And we can mess around with. If it's more newly planted, I normally bring the root depth down a little bit.
Well, they're large palms, we plant them at 5 feet.
Right.
The hole is 5 feet. The root ball is about 4.5.
Now remember, here's what it's doing. When you tell me the depth, my goal now is to fill that depth up with water. You tell me 5 feet, I'm going to water the crap out of it. I would not do that. So I'm going to back this off actually a little bit. I'm going to say 18 inches because I can always change it. I just want to see what it's going to do at 18 inches. And then it says, okay, what size, is that root ball right now?
4 by 4 by 4.
Okay, so it says 5. I'm going to change that to 4. And then how many bubblers are there for tree?
2.
So it has default of 1. I'm going to change that to 2. Obviously it's probably flat because these are probably little tree wells. I have no idea what your soil type out here is. If it's typical of everywhere else, it's probably either a...
Sandy, kind of a...
well, the fill might be... So what do you have around it though?
Well, the fill is sand,
Okay.
of course.
But it's a sandy loam base because you're close to the hills?
It's with sandy loam,
Okay.
too.
So we'll say sandy loam, and then it's obviously sunny all day. So that's station number 32. We'll come back and look at it. So here's what station 32 wants to do without any adjusting or tweaking. Just answering those questions. This station wants to water every 3 days. There again, these are the days that are open that it could water, but it's choosing not to. It's going to water every 3 days, and it's going to water one time for 7 minutes. So that's a default non-adjusted schedule. Now, obviously, you can go in there, you can tweak the heck out of it.
I'd probably give it a twice that.
Okay, so let's go in there and we're going to play around with some of the information.
3 foot in the depth. See what that.
Yeah, we can change the depth on that.
See exactly.
So where do I make those adjustments? Well, the first thing I can do is I can come in here to the station information, and I can edit that. And I can say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and I'll go to the 24 inches instead of the 18. And let's just try that, see what it does. So now we're watering 9 minutes instead of 7 minutes.
Twice a week.
Okay. Now, the other thing we can do besides changing the information on the station, I can go in there and I can change some of the adjustments on the station. And some of the adjustments are, obviously I can water budget. Water budget simply means whatever I'm supposed to do, you can give me a percentage and I'll up it or down it by your percentage. So if you wanted double the runtime, I could give it 200% and it would double it. I could give it 50%, it would cut it in half. So that's pretty obvious as to what water budget is. The other...
Just do that station, right?
This is on the station. I do have an ability to adjust multiple stations at a time, but we'll talk about that feature in a minute. The other thing that you can change, though, is you can also change basically what is the trigger point as to when we start watering again. And the way to think about this soil moisture depletion number is think about the gas in your gas tank. What you do is sometimes you maybe drive around until that tank gets empty. You can't do that with plants. So typically in the landscape community, you never want to use more than 50% of the available water in the soil before you water it again. If you go beyond 50% of the allowable water, then you're stressing your plants out, and you can actually get into what is called permanent wilting point, where you're actually causing root death and you can kill the plant. And so in the industry, we never want to get beyond 50% depleted. But there are times we may want to trigger the irrigation before 50%. So as an example, in drip systems, bubbler systems, and subsurface, the rule of thumb is you want to keep that soil more evenly moist. In spray systems and shrub beds and in lawns, you want to do a little drying out between cycles. So the percentages are different. We default at 50% on sprinklers. We default at 25% on bubblers, drip, and subsurface irrigation. So if I were to go ahead and click on this to see what is available, you can see if I were to change the soil moisture depletion to allowing it to get to 50% used up, it would actually change the cycle from watering every 4 days to once every 8 days. Now when it does that, though, it has to put more water in the soil to do that, so your runtime would change, it would go up. I can go the other direction. I could say I want to water more frequently. I don't want to let it dry out at all. I could say I want to water when it only gets 50% used up. That means you're going back to the gas station every day to top off the tank. But when I go to a 3-day, it's going to have to put less water back in the tank because there's less opening in the tank. You didn't use as much gas. So this allows you to play around with the frequency. Where this really plays a part will be in the wintertime. In the wintertime, you may find that some of the stations are watering very infrequent, and that may concern you. You may feel the plants aren't established enough, or you may think, you know what, I need to keep the valves operating once in a while just to keep them running. Because if the valve sits off for weeks on end, sometimes, typically on older systems, they get stuck. So a lot of guys say, hey, I want to go ahead and at least run these things once every week or two just to keep moving, keep the ports from clogging up and so on. So what typically a lot of guys will do is they'll take this from 50% down to 15 in the wintertime just so something's happening. If it's an HOA, this satisfies the little lady walking the dog because at least she sees sprinklers coming on once in a while. Otherwise, they start calling saying, hey, you haven't irrigated, the ground looks dry. Who cares from that standpoint? So that's another area that you can tweak as far as the frequency amount. So if you're looking at a station going, it's watering too frequently or not frequently enough, you can change that by messing around with the soil moisture depletion. Okay? You and I talked a little bit about different ways to water. This is our fully automatic method. So as an example, if you decided you wanted to go in there and bump that to 200%, and we'll save it, and go back and look at the station, and this is probably watering about what you think it needs to water, which is like 18 minutes every 4 days. That's pretty close to what you want. That's fine. And this station will fully adjust. So as you start coming in the wintertime, what you're going to see is you're going to see the day pattern stretch out. It'll go every 5 days, every 6 days, and so on, because obviously the need is a lot less. If it was even hotter, which it could be, you might see that every 4 days dropped to every 3 days. You might see the runtime adjust. So this is a fully automatic station right now. It's going to do everything it needs to do. It'll never water outside of the water window. So if you tell me I can only water between 8 at night and 6 in the morning, it will never violate that. That's when it's going to water if it has an opportunity. And it will never water on days that you've told it can't water. So again, if you don't want irrigation on the weekends because there's nobody here to service the equipment, you simply block Saturdays and Sundays, and the system will adjust around that. So we always work within your parameters, but we'll work within your parameters. We'll do what we need to do to get it done within those. So if I go back to this schedule adjustments, my hotspot likes to not work when I need it to. There she goes, I think.
They're going to do it.
Got my little Verizon hotspot.
Way too fast.
It was working great there for a while, wasn't it? I was impressed.
You're going too fast, though. It heated.
It probably did. This thing actually does get really hot. There it goes. So here are the 3 ways you can water. Fully automatic, we just showed you that. It does its own thing based on the data you plug in. The opposite is fixed. And under fixed, you just tell me the days to water, you tell me how long to run, and I do it. So I go in there and say, hey, I want to water on Mondays and Thursdays and Saturdays, and I want to water for 15 minutes, and you're done. And it will never adjust. It just follows this day pattern forever until you make a change. The disadvantage, obviously, is we're not taking advantage of the system. You're not watering according to need. You're just watering like a conventional clock. Below that, we also have cycle and soak. We automatically do that, but if you decide you don't want to override us, if we're trying to break it up into segments that are too short or too many of them, or it's not breaking it up into enough segments because you're still having runoff, you can override our cycle and soak and say, never run it for more than 5 minutes before you go off and do something else, and then give me a 20-minute soak, and then come back and give me again. My runtime is still my runtime. It's just I'm gonna decide how I want it to be broken up to eliminate runoff or overspray, those kinds of things. So again, right now this is fixed. This is a non-ET system now on this station. Just going to do my thing. You could also use this for non-irrigation applications. So we have guys that will use this to turn lights on, or it might be a fill for a water fountain or something like that, where they don't want the ET to adjust it. They just want to give it a certain amount of time every day. They could use that for that station. The third method is a blend. So the middle one here is user defined. And here's how this one works. This one looks identical to fixed. I'm telling it how long to run. I'm telling what days to water. What makes a difference? What makes a difference is that this 15 minutes that you've told me is based on the current weather. So as the weather changes, we will adjust the runtime up or down. As it gets hotter, the 15 minutes goes to 16, 17, and so on. As the weather gets cooler, the 15 drops to 14, 13, 12, and so on. What it doesn't do here is it doesn't adjust your day pattern. So if you tell me to water 3 days a week and you don't change it, in the middle of winter, it's still watering 3 days a week. It may be running 1 minute, but it will follow your day pattern until you make a change. So the advantage is we do what you want to do. The disadvantage is we don't adjust the day pattern. And if you don't do it, then you're going to have schedules that are going to look kind of foolish. Because even 1 minute every couple of days, you go, that's not a big deal. Yeah, but you just don't look good when you're irrigating every couple of days in the wintertime. You're going to have people questioning your capabilities. They go, what the hell are you doing? You know, it's middle of winter, you're watering every 3 days. Now obviously you can change this anytime you want, and we have the capability in our system to do it not one station at a time, but groups of stations at a time. So I do have guys that use this, and they typically will go in there like once a month and adjust their day pattern, adjust their run time, and they feel more comfortable doing that than they do letting the system be fully automatic. But again, every station's independent. Some can be fixed, some can be full, some can be user-defined. It's whatever you choose it to do from that standpoint, okay? And again, the reason we forced you putting data in, because if you ever flip-flop back and forth on these different irrigation methods, the data's already there. You don't have to go and re-enter it. So that's why we force you up front to give us the data. Even if you're not going to use the scheduling engine, you want to use user-defined. If down the road you decide to put it fully automatic, you don't have to remember and go plug all that information in. It's already in the database and it's protected from that standpoint. So again, this information is not stored here. This information is stored on the web. And we have 3 server farms. We have one at our locations in Northern California, then we have one in Texas and one elsewhere. We use the same server network that Amazon uses, so it's very high end. If one server area goes down, we have 2 backup systems that are redundant, so you never lose your data from that standpoint. The way it works on our controller is we only communicate for about 15-30 seconds a day normally. If you lose communication, somebody comes out there and snaps off the antenna, which I've never seen done, but let's say somebody did that. The controllers store a 7-day block of schedules in the clock, and it will just keep repeating that same 7-day block until it gets back online again. What you lose is you lose the system adjusting, and you lose the system reporting issues, whether they're electrical issues or flow issues or whatever the case happens to be. Plus, you will also get a report telling you that you missed communication. So if the system doesn't communicate every day, you will get an alert letting you know, hey, controller number 1 did not communicate on this date and time. Check it out. And you come out here and find out that somebody's either broken off the antenna or maybe they turned the power off at the clock and nothing's happening from that standpoint. Okay. We don't have flow here? No? Okay.
Putting it in or something. No, we can't. Yeah, we can't because we got a standalone down below.
Right. Okay.
Those 3 stations that were not there, they're used somewhere else.
So I talked a little bit about this grouping feature, and this will really come into play as you add more clocks on the project. Because it's, you know, with 1 clock, it's not a big deal to go in and change a station, adjust it. You want to bring the water footage up or down or whatever. But as you start getting the system, it gets larger and larger. Then it becomes a management issue as to how easy is it for you to adjust things. Okay. So what you do on our system is you go back to the site level. The site is the kind of the upper tier of the system. From the site, I see all my clocks. So in this case, you only have 1. Not really impressive, but we'll play with it here anyway. There's a feature here called Manage Groups. So I click on that, and right now you don't have any groups. It's just blank. So you decide, you know what, I want to go ahead and make a group. What group do I want to go ahead and make? Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a group, and I'm going to call these my my palm bubblers. So I want to make a group that has nothing in it but the stations that have palm trees with bubblers. Well, I don't remember what stations those are. I mean, I got 18 clocks out here and they're all over the place. How am I going to know? Well, we have what is called a smart filter here. And we're going to utilize the smart filter, and we're going to tell the smart filter, I want you to go find me all the stations that have palm trees, and only the ones that are using palm trees with bubblers. And then I would have a list of all my clocks here. I could imagery pick the clocks, so I can say, give me all my clocks. So I pick all 8 clocks, and then say continue. And then what it does, it goes out and it finds any station that has that information entered in it. Well, the only one is the station I just did, which is 32. So that station has a checkbox.
Because I didn't.
Because we haven't put you guys haven't done the stations yet. Okay. So anything you can think of, I can group, and you can have stations in multiple groups. I can have another group that says all stations. You know, I could have another one that says palm trees with bubblers on the north side. So you can have as many groups as you want. The advantage to having groups is that whenever you need to make a change, you find that these palm trees are getting a little too much water and you want to adjust them all back, you can go to the group and make an adjustment. So I've made this group now. And here it is. There's a group called palm trees. It'll tell you on how many clocks it is and how many stations. Not real impressive. I got one clock with one station on it. But anyway, so I go in there and I want to make a change to the group. And pretty much anything I can do to a station, I can do to a group. So think, I could have 50 palm trees dowels out there. Instead of going to each one to change the water budget, I can say, you know what? I want to change that water budget back to 100%. Go. And now what it's done, it's going out into all the clocks and it made the water budget on all those stations back to 100%. You know, you could decide that you want to go ahead and you know, change the block days. You know, you've added a body out here and you want to give the system an opportunity to water on Saturdays. Or maybe they decided they're going to cut back on people, so we don't want you watering Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. You could change that across the entire board. You know, if it was a landscape situation, you could change the mow day. I'm managing a very large project and we mow on Thursdays, and all of a sudden we have a change in our, you know, scheduling, and we decide to move mowing from Thursdays to Wednesdays. I go in, I hit the lawn stations, and I change them, and I'm done. So again, it makes it for very quick changing from the standpoint. Okay. So the main thing that you guys need to do right now is you need to do what is called a landscape or water audit of your system out there. Now you can utilize that by looking at a set of as-bills. You can do that by walking the project and using your phone as your remote control and turn one station on at a time. And then we have these sheets that are basically called landscape checklist sheets. And you simply go through and you check it off on each station as to what you are doing. And then you take the information back to the computer and you plug it in from that standpoint. To be honest, the better job you do putting in good data, the better the schedules will become. The area where you really want to spend some time is going to be on the application of the sprinkler. Pretty obviously a palm tree is a palm tree. It's pretty obvious you have a bubbler there. What isn't so obvious is it a quarter-gallon bubbler, a half-gallon bubbler, or a one-gallon bubbler? You answer that question wrong, you can see how it's going to throw your irrigation off. If you have 1 gallon bubblers, you say quarter-gallon, I'm going to put down 4 times as much water as I really need. You know, if you have 1 gallon bubblers, but you say a quarter, I'm only putting down 25% of what I need. So again, it's good data in, good schedules. Bad data in, bad schedules from that standpoint. So again, you have an advantage that it is a new installation. You know, it hasn't had 5 years with people changing nozzles out whenever time they fix something. So your as-built are probably really good as a good reference for your scheduling from this standpoint. So what I would do at this point is I would just go through station by station and program them. Yeah. You know, the first thing I would do is I'd get it off this establishment schedule, because right now we're watering every day. So we need to get that done. And then I would go ahead and put it on probably a fixed schedule where you could say I want to water these stations every other day or every third day, whatever, until I get the data in. And then you can plug the data in one station at a time, or you can copy them, or whatever you want to do. And we are available, plus I have 2 full-time guys at our facility in Northern California that can get online with you. So as you're doing this and you have questions, you don't have to worry about trying to fight it alone. They can get online with you and they can help you out with that. So if you're going, I forget what Mark said regarding how to do this or how to delete the station or whatever, they'll walk you through that from that standpoint. Okay? Any data that you change here doesn't immediately go to the clock. That data will go to the clock roughly 2 hours before the window. So if your window is at 8 o'clock at night, somewhere around 6 o'clock, the system will communicate. It'll pull all the latest data from the servers, and that now goes into the clock. If you want
suspend watering?
No, well, it depends what you answer. If you say, oh, I want to suspend in 2 days till 5 days.
What about shutting the clock off?
Then if you want to do it right now, that's an option, and it does it right now. Okay, so it kind of depends what you answer. It wants to minimize the communications as you can, because we're on a cell network. We're not on unlimited, you know, communication. If we were, then, you know, right now the subscription cost is about $200 a year. After the first year is included. So obviously, if $200 spread over 12 months comes out to about $15 a month or whatever the number, $12 a month. If this was unlimited communication, it'd be a whole lot more $12 a month. So we try to do whatever we can do to minimize the amount of communication that's occurring. So if I don't need to send the information now, I'm going to hold off and I'll send it tonight when I normally send it tonight.
Until after hours or whatever. When you're free.
So again, if I want to communicate, right here on the clock is a area where I can say communicate right now. I made some changes. I want to see the changes. I want to guarantee it's going to go. I can click connect now, and it'll go through a process where it's going to send the information and show us that it's sent the information and verify the information is there. The only time you can't do this is when the clock is irrigating. We can irrigate or we can communicate. We can't do both at the same time, with the exception of suspending. You know, somebody calls up and says, what the hell are you doing? We're having the grand opening and we got sprinklers running. You can get on your phone and shut it down instantly. So that's the one thing we can do that's different. If your water window happens to be during the day, and then you decide you want to get on your phone to turn on the station on to manually water, it says, I'm already watering, leave me alone. I can't do that. Or if in the middle of the night you decided, you know, I really want to change the stations, you know, when I want to communicate it right now, it says, I'm already in the middle of irrigating it, you're going to have to wait. So at some point you would get an error message here saying, hey, leave me alone, I'll try it tomorrow.
Can I walk the site with my cell phone and go put on station 5, do a test or something?
Yeah.
Or I can just do station 5 and it'll come on, and then I can go station 6?
Yeah, let's go over to the other window. Here's my window, here's my little phone. So again, I've tried to, you know, mimic what it looks like on a phone. And the only difference here is that instead of going to ET water, you're going to m.ET water. Mobile. Okay. The secret here is don't put the www in. Because if you go www.m.ET water, that doesn't make sense to the internet. The internet wants to see either, you know, it's basically it's limitation of 2 things before the dot. So it's m.etwater.com. So I've already logged onto my account. So I'm on my phone, and I push the button on my phone that says water. And it says, okay, what site do you want to water? And it's hard to read here, but I'm going to pick my Brea controllers. And then under my Brea controllers, I have 3 clocks that are listed. So again, you'd pick your site, then you'd have a list of your clocks. You pick your clock that you want to irrigate, and again, I name them so they're more easy to understand when I'm looking at them versus 1 through 7. And then it says, okay, what station you want to water? And it's hard to see here, but I'm going to go ahead and water my rose bed. And how long you want to water? And I say I'm going to water for 5 minutes, and then I click water now. So I'm just basically just doing this on my phone, drop downs or whatever it happens to be.
So is it watering now in Brent?
Well, I don't know, we'll have to see. So far we don't know. So it's going to tell me whether it's making it, because again, unlike a normal remote, you push the button, you hope it turns on, you don't know. Here we verify that. So right now it's telling me that it's physically on for 4 minutes and 50 seconds. So my rose beds and my pop-ups are up and my bubblers are spraying in my rose bed. And that's what you're going to do with your phone. So you're going to walk the project, you're going to turn it on, and you're going to see this on your phone. And then after you say, you know, yeah, it looks good, I can go ahead and hit stop. And it takes about 4 seconds for the information to go back and forth and verify it. I can then go to my next station. Now this is going to change quite a bit here in about the next 30 to 45 days. The reason is, this is nice, but it doesn't give you a lot of features. It gives you the ability to turn a station on and off. So guys, typical of our system, it's web-based. We put out a feature and then people will comment on it and then we modify it. So what they want here is they go, this is really good, I can turn the station on. I really wish I could go in there and say I want to turn all stations on for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're adding that. We're going to add the ability to run a test program. We're going to add the ability to run a group of stations where you can say, you know what, I don't want to run all the stations, but I notice that the area over here in the lawn's a little dry. I want to water station 1, 7, 12, and 15, each for 5 minutes. It'll do each of those separately and it's done.
And walk away.
I'm also going to be adding an up and down or a forward and back button. Because right now you have to go from station and pick another station. Well, maybe I don't know what my stations are. Maybe I know that I'm walking the project in the order it's wired. I just want to be able to go next and next and next. So we're adding a up and down or a next and previous button on there also. And because it's web-based, one day it isn't there, the next day you log on, it looks different, and the feature's there. So that's the beauty of it being a web-based system. I don't have to send you software. I don't have to change anything. We send you an email saying, hey, on Monday when you're online, you'll notice these changes have occurred. And here's what they do, and here's how to use them from that standpoint. We do that quarterly. And this will be our first big change for the what we call Quick Draw, which is a mobile app from that standpoint. To be honest, the best tool for utilizing these systems as far as a water management tool is a tablet. Because a tablet allows you to use our big website, yet it's still small enough you can turn stations on and off and do that kind of stuff. The advantage is when you're out there walking the project, not only can you turn the station on and off, but you can say, well, it looks a little wet, I can go right to and make the adjustment. Some people will attempt to use their phone on the big website. You can go to etwater.com on here, but now you're doing a lot of the scrolling in and out, trying to make it so you can see what you need to be seeing on the phone. It's kind of a pain in the butt. So a tablet really is kind of a blend of the two. I have an
right now the tablet does have all those other features you were just talking about.
Which looks kind of stupid on the tablet because it basically looks like this on my tablet. Well, it's a whole lot of nothing. It's a lot of screen for not a whole lot of picking from that standpoint. But if I go to the other website, again, the tablets are big enough that I can see the whole thing on my tablet.
You go in here, where's the manual watering when you want to go?
Well, I go over that station.
Okay.
And right there, water.
Oh. And then
hit water now.
Yeah.
And it does the same verification that shows you that it's on, the whole same deal.
And does it do a test?
Not yet.
Not yet?
That's hopefully going to be part of this whole Quick Draw change from that standpoint.
What I purchased on that controller gives me 1 year subscription. Is that what it is?
It comes with a 1 year subscription. Actually, I think you guys have a 9 year or something.
Yeah, a lot of customers will buy. See, on a lot of construction projects, the customer will choose to front load the communication because there's more money in the construction budget than there is normally normal maintenance.
Oh, right.
So as an example, everything we sell to the city of Los Angeles, they buy a 10-year package. UCLA, 10-year package. LAUSD, 10-year package. Every In-N-Out burger location throughout their company has an ET water clock, 10-year package. But then we run into other customers like Long Beach Unified School District, which has a couple hundred clocks. Their deal is they don't want to burden this year's budget on next year's communication. So they go year to year. That's fine. I mean, it's whatever they want to do from that standpoint.
So when the subscription runs out, you just send emails out to...
Oh, we just drive you nuts with emails saying either pay or we're going to hold you hostage, and we're going to slowly water budget back your irrigation system till your plants are dead. And
then once it does go offline, then you got to go. Everything is you're programming it.
If you can program this as a conventional clock. To be honest, programming it offline, where you're not utilizing the online stuff, is a royal pain. It really is, because they tried to build a lot of features into it as far as independent station control with separate runtimes and everything else. That's wonderful, but it makes it very cumbersome and time-consuming to program it in the field. Okay, and I have some customers. We were talking about a guy right now. We have a clock over at the Disney Studios, and the guy just insists on running it offline. And personally, I think you're an idiot to run it offline. I can run a fixed schedule online. Now I have the advantage of I can adjust it anywhere. I can turn it on, turn it off anywhere. So I have all the advantages of having a non-ET system. I can program it much faster here because I can copy stations. I can group program. It just makes no sense, personally, to program it offline if you have the service.
And he's got the subscription.
Yeah.
Yes. A lot of people, they're afraid when they first get it, say, well, I don't want to get stuck with the subscription. I have to pay for it, but it's already included in the clock.
Or a lot of these guys just aren't computer guys. Yeah. They're afraid to try anything. Yeah. And it's amazing because I have some guys that you would look at the guy and talk to the guy, and you go, this guy wouldn't know how to turn on a computer. And the guys that will attempt it in very short time, they're very proficient at it. And it's amazing. I have calls from guys that I just crack up because I go, I can't believe this guy knows what he's doing. But if you give it a shot, you better yourself. You're looked at a lot better in the company. So these guys that are working for these maintenance companies, landscape maintenance companies, they're now making themselves more accessible to ownership. They're going, yeah, I can move this guy up. This guy knows more than simply going out there and bleeding the valve, which is what a lot of these guys do. So
it seems like a simple system.
It is. We let you do what you want to do. We don't lock you into anything. If you want to run it fully automatic, that's the way I would do it in most stations. Go for it. If you don't, that's fine. I'll log out of his system here real quick. I'll show you mine. Let me go to mine here real quick. The other thing is we have multiple layers of logins. So as an example, you might have somebody here that wants to take a look, but you don't want him messing with it. We can set up a level login for him where he has look permission, but no access. He can run a report. He can see what's going on, but he can't make any adjustments. So we do that a lot with HOAs where there's a Greens Committee member that thinks he wants to get on there. So you let him look, but you don't let him mess around with it from that standpoint. So here's my system, and I'm monitoring a lot of sites like Eddie is doing. So these are all the various sites that I'm monitoring. I have a little chunk of Caltrans here on the 210 freeway that I'm keeping an eye on. I have a lot of Rosemead, City of Rosemead controllers on here. I have a project down at Jamboree in the 405 freeway. I have San Bernardino Unified School District. So I have some projects I like to keep an eye on, including my own. And here's the dashboard. The dashboard is showing me kind of an overview of what's going on. So I know in all of those clocks, none of them are suspended. They're all running. If there was a clock suspended, I would know it right on the dashboard. There are 70 stations that aren't fitting into the water window right now. What that means is that you've told me I can't water outside of the hours of 8 at night till 6 in the morning. But like Caltrans, I got 8 till 6. They're all rotor stations. They need to run for long periods of time, and they're 48 station clocks. I can't get it done. There's not enough hours in a day to get it done. So what happens is if the station can't water completely, it gets bumped to the next opportunity. So during the summertime on very large clocks with rotors typically, stations are always leapfrogging themselves, getting bumped. So that's why I have quite a few stations getting bumped right now. As the season cools down and I need less water, you'll see this begin to creep down because there is enough time in the water window to get the irrigation done. I have 15 clocks that have miscommunication. So I have some controllers, and this is over a 7-day period. So this might be 2 clocks that have missed every day. Okay, and I can click on this and it'll bring up a list of what clocks have this condition or which clocks have this condition and so on. I have some clocks that are utilizing flow, so I have some low flow alerts. I have a few high flow alerts. Hardware-wise, all the clocks hardware-wise are working fine, but I have a few stations that have a short, and I have a lot of stations that have an open circuit, which means either they've programmed stations that don't exist on the clock and it wants to see some power being used, and because there's nothing attached, it's saying there's a low current alert from that standpoint. It also could be that I have some 2-wire systems out there and we register open circuits on 2-core. I don't have any range sensors on any of these controllers. If I did, I would see that. I only have 2 stations running an establishment schedule on all those stations that I have. I do have a lot of guys that are using fixed schedules right now, which I don't like to see. And I have a lot of guys using user-defined schedules, which is better than fixed from that standpoint.
User-defined is what I was talking about?
Yeah.
It won't do the days, but it'll
adjust the runtime. Yeah. Okay. So if I go to my account overview here, and I pick my Brea controllers, and I look at my home clock. Okay, so here's my schedule. So my schedule actually runs from early in the morning till early in the morning, 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. I don't like hearing the sprinklers running at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I don't want my grass being wet all night long either. And I know these are my lawn stations. Why? Because I have blocked days there. That's the day my gardener comes, so he mows on Thursdays. And mine shows Thursdays because the runtime is on Thursday because it's Thursday morning.
Yeah.
If I brought my water window back before midnight, this would automatically bump over to Wednesday. Okay. So right now my lawns are watering every 4 days. And personally, I think they're still getting too much water. So I'm always tweaking a little bit there. I have St. Augustine on 2 stations, Hybrid Bermuda on 1, and I got some cool season on the other. I'm watering every 4 days in this heat, and I have a fairly high ET area. I'm over in Brea, so I'm up over in those foothill areas, so it's pretty warm over there. My lawns look great. And I get these guys that go, oh my God, you got to water every day right now. Oh, you got to water. You guys are nuts. I'm watering every 4 days, and I still think I'm putting too much water. When I water, it waters deep.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll come back and hit it multiple times to get the water deep because I have a root system that's fairly deep. I can take a soil probe and pull it in there, and I'm going to get a root system that's this deep. That's what I want to do from that standpoint. I do, though, I have a couple of stations on my clock that I don't have running on ET. I have a very narrow planter bed that's surrounded by concrete. I put a lot of color in there, and I tried ET, it just doesn't work because the concrete's sucking the water out like a sponge. So I have this station on user defined. I have it watering every day. I told it how long to run, and it is adjusting up or down a little bit, but I put a lot of water on it. It's not a lot of water, but it runs along, because it's just the way the system happens to be. So again, you can blend those kind of things. The other thing that I can do is I can run a report here, and this will show you what a lousy job that I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and do a over or under watering report on that clock. And I'm going to do it over the last year. I'm going to see how I'm doing. And you're going to see that I'm overwatering the snot out of that drip station. There's 2 drip stations. So here's how you read this. This is the amount of water I've used in inches. This is optimal, what it considers to be optimal. If the bar comes to the plant, which looks like a piece of broccoli, but it's a tree, if the water goes to the plant, that's 100% ET, that's optimal. I don't consider that to be optimal. I think if you're watering to the optimal position, you're wasting a lot of water. You don't need to be watering 100% of ET, never have to. So what I want to see is I want to see this. I want to see my usage being less than what 100% ET is. So right now I've watered 26 inches for the year on this station. I watered 10 inches less than what it really wanted. My lawn looks great. So this is what I want to see on all the stations. These are my 2 drip stations. So the data is kind of skewed there because I'm watering it every day anyway, and you really can't put the right data in to fit this drip tape that I have. So it's showing that I'm putting, 126, I ain't putting 126 inches down. It's just that I can't get good data in there based on this very narrow bed with a single strip of drip tape and so on. So I know to ignore this data. These are all the stations that really make sense to me. So these are my lawn stations here. Here's my deep well tree system. I have the same thing you guys have with the Rainbird deep well bubblers on there. My rose bed. I have some drought tolerant ground cover in my front planter. My vegetable garden has not ran for a year. I have that station turned off. So I can run all sorts of reports on the system from that standpoint. Whatever data is in it will be stored indefinitely. If your system's been on the ground for 5 years and you want to see how you irrigated on station 4 on July 3rd, 2007, that data is there. You can pull that up. So from a standpoint of just running reports or maybe even liability, where maybe somebody trips out here and says, oh, it was wet, it was your sprinklers. And you can run a report and say, that's funny because we didn't irrigate that day. Irrigation was off. You can't tamper with that information. It's history, it's stored in the system from that standpoint. Again, it's a lot to pick up in one setting, but again, we're available. You get us on the phone. We can do webinars where you can be in front of your computer. We can be in front of our computer. Feel free to call us up. I'll let you know, and if Eddie's not here so I can say it, you guys have the best distributor in Southern California. In fact, actually the best distributor in the country in regards to service. These guys jump on stuff right away. If you ever have any issues out here as far as hardware or problems, the ITS guys, you have Imperial Technical Services, you can't beat them. I used to be the general sales manager for Hydroscape for 14 years. We had pretty good service. These guys have better service. They have a couple of guys that I used to work with back when I was at Rainbird a long time ago. So Eddie, there's nothing he doesn't know in regards to irrigation and electrical troubleshooting. You have an issue, he can solve it for you. And these 2 guys typically run around in vans. They have 2 vans that they run around Southern California. They're fully equipped and they can service stuff right away. And he's just as capable on this system as I am from that standpoint. Okay? So you guys we'll pack this up and we'll go out to the field and we'll play with the clock out there?
Sure.
Okay, I'll show you some of the features the clock has. We do have a lot of diagnostic stuff built into the clock that is fairly new. We also have password lockout option on the clock, which we just recently added. So if you do have too many people getting into the controller because it's a 751 key, in fact, we developed that feature for the city of Rosemead. John over there says, I love your system, but everybody and their brother seems to have a key, and they keep screwing around with my clock, turn it on, turn it off, doing stuff. I go, what do you want? He says, I wish I could put a password on my keypad. We went back, my engineer in 30 days came up with a password protection. It took a firmware update to our hardware, so we had to go out there and put a laptop to the computer and reprogram the hardware. And now he has all of his clocks locked. So you get to the clock, you punch any key, it says, give me the password. Once you punch the password in, you get 30 minutes of usage, and then it locks itself back up again from that standpoint. Okay. So I'm going to get off here. Any other questions? Let this thing. You can help yourself.
And do you have another card?
Yes.
Thank you.
They're great notebooks to have. Controller, which is this piece here, in what is called a strong box. This is a brand manufacturer who makes these stainless steel boxes. So what our distributor has done is they've basically bought in the strong box, they buy our controller, and then they assemble it into a single unit, and that's why they call it an assembly. So this is the unit. This unit has a 3-point lock, so when you close the lid, it's spring-loaded up here, and it'll actually grab on 3 positions, so the lid is pretty secure, so you can't mess around with it from that standpoint. It has a simple, again, 751, it's kind of a rainbird key to lock it, but there is a hasp right here where you can put a padlock in it. So if you want a little more secure than just a regular key, when it's closed you can add a padlock right here, and unless they have the key to the padlock, they're not getting in the sucker. I mean, it would take a whole lot of prying to get inside of this box. The door can only be opened when this is exposed, which is not when the lid is down. Okay, so again, we have it's piston loaded, so it's it's kind of protected from either slamming on your fingers or going up too hard. And down below what we have is a power switch. So one thing about our controllers, and like a lot of clocks, is you don't mess around with the clock until you power it off. So if you're going to, maybe change a module, or you're going to be doing some troubleshooting or something, you're going to take the panel off, whatever the case happens to be, power it off. If you do that, you'll find you won't have any issues. And that's true kind of across the breadth of all the manufacturers. So it's real simple, because all you got to do is turn it off, and the power's off. So they've made it very simple. They also give you an outlet down here, so if you need to plug something in, recharge your phone or something, that's fine. I would not suggest you use that to be powering some kind of giant drill, or something that's going to draw a lot of amps, because you could damage the system. The unit does have a surge protector on here for the irrigation clock from that standpoint. The box itself also has a GFI, and if I'm not mistaken, the GFI also, this is wired through the GFI?
Actually, no. Actually, you could turn the controller off and power something on.
Okay.
From that, and avoid all the feedback.
If the GFI is popped, do I still have power up here?
Yes.
Okay. Down below there's a grounding rod that is in here. So this hopefully is a 4-foot long piece of copper rod that's going down in the ground as a ground. It's grounded from the rod to the back of the controller. Here has a ground for that.
8 foot long, actually.
Is it? Good. And then what we have here is we have a terminal strip across the bottom. Everything is numbered and named for what it is. So you'll have all the station numbers. You'll have the common. You'll have the master valve. If there was flow, you'd have flow terminals. If there was rain sensor, you'd have rain sensor terminals. This clock doesn't have that. So this is basically the unit. So when you look at the controller, you'll see that it has a display. It'll be displaying the current date and time. The clock has non-volatile memory, which means turning power on and off is not going to affect anything. It'll affect it if it happens to go off during the irrigation cycle. There's no irrigation, obviously, because we can't power without power. But when the power comes back on, all your schedules are still here. All your time and date is still here, so you never run the risk of losing any of that information from the system. It also, if you hit the enter button, and you guys can step a little closer, you want to see this, but if I hit the enter button, it'll tell me the station size of the clock, and it will give us the version of the firmware. So right now you're on the latest version at 610. Sometimes somebody may ask you what is the version of the firmware. You can look at it right here. And they also might ask you for the serial number. So if you're doing some kind of a swap out or something, this is the serial number. It's listed right on the display. You never lose your schedules. Even if some bus comes down here and takes this sucker out, and you have to replace it, you don't have to reprogram it. Because all you're going to call us up and say, here's the new serial number, can you move my data? The guy will say, hang on a second, and he'll push a bunch of keys, and he'll move all the data from the old serial number to the new serial number, and you're back in business. So that's another beauty of the system, is you're never have to worry about having backups of your schedules from that standpoint. Other things you can do here, there's a test dial button on the bottom. Things that we're always looking for is we want to see the signal strength. So what we have here is we have an antenna on the outside of the box. And I'm going to push the test dial button here, and it's going to give me a signal from either 1 to 35. And we normally want to see a 6 or better. Here it's varying anywhere between a 5 and a 14. Part of it's the fact I got the thing open and the antenna's over on its side and whatnot, but we have no issues here communicating. If I want to verify communication, I can go ahead and hit enter, and you'll hear it squawk, and right now it's communicating. So it's going to get online, it's going to exchange the information, and it's going to verify that it communicates fine. And you can watch it actually occur online. You don't have a lot of data, so it's going to happen fast. It's downloading block 1. It's downloading block 2. I don't think you have any more than that on the clock. Now you have 3 blocks worth of data. No, it actually went to 4. And it's done. So it takes no more than about 15 seconds. This is occurring every day automatically. You can always force it through your phone. You can force it through the computer. You can force it by coming over here. Okay. A couple of things that we have is we have a valve test built into the clock now. So to access the valve test, you simply hit the down arrow key, and it comes up and it says valve test, enter station number, and it says all, and the all is flashing. If I hit the enter key right now, it's going to turn on every station in sequence for just a couple of milliseconds, and it's checking for the electrical characteristics of what's going on. And it's going to monitor to see if there are open circuits, good circuits, or shorted circuits. Pretty much everything has bubblers. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there was a bad solenoid, it would tell me what station and what
Yeah. So we'll let it go through its thing here. When it's done, it'll give us a summary. It tells which stations are doing what. And the way that it works is we're measuring milliamps. And the way it's set up is anything from 0 to 100 milliamps is considered to be an open circuit. That means we're not using very much power. None of the power is getting back around. So anything under 100 milliamps is considered to be open. Anything from 100 to 500 is considered good. Anything from 500 to plus is a short. So right now the clock is about done. Almost. So right now it's telling me stations, the master rail is open, so you don't have a master rail wired on the system. Stations 5 and 6 are open, so you must have certain stations that are wired and other stations that are not. 5, 6, 7?
not wired up at all.
Okay, 8 through 13 is okay, 14 through 20 is okay, and then it goes up to station 22, and everything from 23 on is open, because I imagine there's nothing hooked up. Okay, so let's say I read a station that says it's either open or it's short, and I want to see what's going on. Instead of going to the valve test and hitting all, I can select an individual station. So give me a station number that's not going to bug anybody, if you know one.
Well, none of them. They're all drifting.
Okay, so I'll hit 5, hit enter.
Well, 5 I don't think is even wired.
Okay, so
6 and 7 I think are
okay, let's go back and make it 9. What it's doing right now is it's actually holding the station on, and it's giving me the actual reading in the window. Because the issue is, it may be open, but how open is it? It may be short, how short is it? So right now I'm reading 176 milliamps, which falls into that 100 to 500 range. That's okay. You may, though, from time to time see a station that says open, but when you run the test on the station, it might be 98 milliamps. So it's just under the okay. We're still going to run it. If we can run it, we're going to run it. We're just going to report it could be an issue on the station. The same thing on the short end. It may be 590 milliamps. It's above our 500. We're going to report to you that there may be an issue, but as long as it's not a dead short, we're still going to run it. Now, if it's a dead short, it immediately will skip past the station. You will get no reading because the clock is going to jump it because it doesn't want to damage the controller. And the way that it works in our controller is the controllers have a built-in resettable fuse. If it runs into a dead short, it opens the circuit up and it sits on the time, awaits the time out, and then when it goes to the next station, it closes and clamps the fuse again and keeps going. So you'll never have to come out here and push a reset button. It's not going to prevent everything from watering, but if it is a station with a dead short, that station will not get water, obviously, because I can't hold the station. You will get reports on these back on your computer. And depending on how you have it set up as far as your alerting, they could either be instant alerts or they could be alerts the next morning in an email summary. If I had flow here, I might want to have a mainline break as an instant alert, which means, yeah, I know you're going to take care of it with the master valve, but even if it's 3 in the morning, I want to be notified because I may want to send a guy out there to verify it's not a mainline blowout that's running down the street. Other issues like, oh, it's a short station or I didn't communicate and stuff, I don't want to know about that in the middle of the night. So next morning in the email summary, I want you to put it in there. So we have lots of abilities now to select how you want to be alerted to any kind of an issue in the field from that standpoint. Okay. What's our fancy keyboard lock at? Is it 1 and 5 or something like that?
Enter and 5?
I don't remember what it was.
Enter and 5?
Let's try enter and 5. Yeah, that's it. You hit enter and 5, it comes up and it has a lock code that's coming up at 000.
We'll be done in about 5 minutes.
If you don't make a change there, then there really is no lock. If you go in there and plug in 3 digits right now, you've set the clock up for a 3-digit password code. And then every time you come to the clock and you try to do something, it's going to pop the window up and say, give me the code. And if you don't have it, you can't do anything. If you have it, it'll let you play around with it for 30 minutes and it locks it up from that standpoint. Okay. What else, Eddie? Obviously, you can manually water from here. So we have the ability to manually water a station, a group of stations, or all the stations. So that's always in here as far as that capability is concerned. You can water budget here. So if you notice a station that was overly wet or overly dry and you didn't have a tablet with you or some way to communicate, you could come up to the clock, go to that station and water budget it up or down. That information is sent back to the system. You will get a message and then you can choose to override it or just leave it alone and it'll absorb that change for you from that standpoint. You can suspend from the field. So you're working on something and you notice there's a blowout. You can come right to the clock and suspend it. It will immediately get online and it'll tell us that it is suspended. Now the difference on suspending it from here versus on the computer is when you suspend it on the computer, you select the time frame. I want to have it suspended for 3 or 4 days. When you suspend it here, it suspends it. And to unsuspend it, you got to do it.
Come back here.
No, you can do it out. You can do it there. It's just that it's not going to. You don't get a selection here of how many days you want to suspend. You just suspended it.
And that one goes immediately, not 2 hours before?
No, that goes right away from that standpoint. The other thing is you have the ability to put it off or online here. You know, again, I don't know of any real good reasons to put it offline, but you can take the clock and put it offline here. If you do that, it will communicate one more time to the system, and it will inform the system that you've chosen to put it offline. So if we see miscommunications, we know it's missed because you've told it not to be online from that standpoint.
Can you override it from the field?
You can, I can.
Okay.
I can force it back online remotely. That is a feature that we might give you guys. We always test things out, so we're playing with it right now behind the scenes to see how well it works. And at some point in time, if enough people say, yeah, that's a good feature to have, I got a guy in the field that keeps screwing with my clocks, I want to be able to force him back online, we'll give you guys that capability to do that.
Sensor enabled, disabled.
Yeah, master valve setup. The 2 things you have to do here that you can't do there is you have to select the master valve here. The default is normally closed, but if you chose to put a normally open master valve in here, you have to make the selection here. And the other thing you have to do here is if you do put a sensor on the clock, some kind of a rain sensor, you have to enable it here. We can't do that remotely. So those are really the only 2 things that you have to do physically at the controller.
And this controller have a normally open master valve and a flow sensor. And considering I got 3 valves, I got the stop planner down below on a standalone system. Will it be able to operate that? Can you program?
It would operate it, but you would not be able to get individual station alerting. because again, this thing's sitting here not doing anything, and there's a station running over there.
Right.
It sees flow.
Right.
It goes, whoa, something's going on.
Can't you like program it that it flows an extra 100 gallons before it shuts off?
Well, we can do what is called an unscheduled flow, and we can set a value there that says, hey, just don't let me get over 50 gallons a minute. That allows that station to run without affecting the clock.
Or those 3 stations.
What you do lose, though, is you lose the ability to have individual station monitoring, because I could be running a station right now and something different's running over there, and I can't control these things always running together, so it's going to mess up my number. It wants to see 50 gallons a minute right now on station 4, and all of a sudden you got some oddball station running there with another 25. It's going to say, whoa, I'm out of my range. So you lose the individual station capability.
That's the other thing I got to consider is programming that clock away from the operating window from this clock, correct?
Well, here's a couple things you could do. If you have enough hours in the day, and you could run both controllers outside of each other.
Okay.
You set one water window here, and you have that one have a different water window. You could actually share the flow sensor between the 2 clocks. There is a device in the market that allows you to share the flow data between the 2 clocks, so that when one clock is running, this clock doesn't see flow, so it doesn't.
But the clock down there is just a cheapy model.
You guys screwed up then.
Yeah, it doesn't have
Yeah.
wires. It wasn't my.
Yeah. Plus the other thing is you would have to have wires going from the flow sensor to both clocks.
Yeah, and that's what. If I could have done that, I would have just wired up these.
Yep.
You could put in a flow sensor just for a high flow
Threshold.
situation only.
Okay, let's just eliminate flow sensor master valve altogether. Now I just want to make sure that, considering most of everything's drip, I could probably have the 2 stations running at the same time. I don't see that there's probably going to be.
You can do that.
That I'm going to lose pressure or.
No, you're not on drip.
You know what I mean?
And that's an issue you
I
have.
don't have to worry that much.
Yeah, our system defaults to run one station at a time.
Yeah.
The only way you can get it to go more than one station at a time is to violate the water window. So you go in there and you say, I need to run for 18 hours a day, but my water window is 10. A warning will come up and say, you don't have enough hours in a day to get it done. Would you like to run multiple stations at a time? You click on that option, and then it brings up a window and you answer some questions, and it says, do you have a master valve? You say no. Do you have a pump start? You say no. What it's doing, it knows that the limitation of the clock is 4 valves on at a time. So if you have a master valve and a pump, it uses 2 of those right there electrically. And now it will say, okay, now you're allowed to run 2 valves at a time. If you say no to both questions, which is what you would do, you have the option now of selecting how many valves do you want to run at a time. You would probably say 2. And now the system knows that it will never run more than 2 at a time. It also allows you to select individual stations that cannot run with other stations. So if you have a clock that has a mix of strip and rotors, the rotors have to run one at a time because they're huge valves. You could click those off and say those have to run by themselves. All these other stations could run together, and the clock will automatically adjust around that. So we have a tendency to hide some features just to make it look simpler on screen, because these are features that 90% of the customers would never use.
Right.
You throw it out there, it confuses them, and they mess it up. So we have some of those kind of features that we hide away, like the ability to run multiple stations at a time. If you don't have flow sensing, we turn that off. We don't want to, again, get confused by guys screwing around with flow sensing when you don't have flow sensing from that standpoint. Okay? Test offline program. Keep it clean. Protect it. Don't be leaving these lids up all day long, letting dust and water and everything get into it. We have seen some pretty horrendous looking controllers, and I am amazed that some of the stuff even runs the way some of these guys take care of it. That's like putting your computer out there. You guys have done a nice job. I don't know who did these, but I like the fact that these pedestals are raised above the pad. So any water that you get here because the rain's going to run off. The other thing you may want to look at doing is, once this thing is completely done, you may want to foam in the conduit. Put a little foam. The reason for that is you're going to get stuff crawling up through the conduit, and you get ants or snails crawling across.
That foam just going in there.
Yeah, because you'll notice, like on the vents have pads over them, so that prevents anything from getting through. So slugs and snails can't crawl through because there are pads there. There are pads on the top where there's also vents. So anything you can do to keep all the critters out of the device will benefit you from that standpoint. Again, we have a lot of guys where, I mean, they just have, you know, open doors. They don't have any protection, and we see frogs and snails and ants and stuff all the time. And we're pretty generous from the standpoint of covering stuff under warranty, but after a while it gets kind of old, you know, when they're blatantly not trying to do anything to keep the stuff clean. You know, this is an investment. You want to have your investment last as long as you can, and one of the ways to do that is just protect it. You know, I mean, you guys have a nice spot here because it's all drip, so you're not going to be spraying on it. You know, you have the really nice assembly from that standpoint, and again, the only issue here is the conduit and a little bit of foam, and you've taken care of that problem.
And maybe birds.
Yeah, and the bird poop, but you're going to close it, so who cares? No, it's all non-volatile, so you have no battery backups. Our older units used to have batteries, and we would normally recommend not to put batteries in them.
What if you lose power during operation when the clock is operating?
You will lose the irrigation that remains for that evening.
But the valve that was operating will shut down?
Yeah. The way this operates is these valves have to have power going to them to keep them on. So it's an AC system, so unless there's power going to the station, as soon as the power is cut, the station turns off.
Yeah, with the solar panels, you guys shouldn't lose any power, right?
So the way that works on this system is if it's in the middle of an irrigation sequence and power goes off, depending how long, if it's off just, you know, for a split second, it won't affect it, but it goes off for 5 minutes. When the power comes back on, your irrigation sequence that was going to remain for the rest of the evening gets lost because it stopped it in the middle. The controller itself, if it sees a power outage of a certain length of time, it will automatically communicate within a certain amount of time, like 10 minutes. It wants to get online to make sure that it has the latest information to make sure nothing has happened. But it's pretty rare that you're going to lose power on the clocks from that standpoint. If you have bad circuitry in the controller, is it 204, Eddie, or 205?
204, 205.
Okay. So same thing. If you happen to fry a circuit, you have a bad station and it gets hit a lot and it fries the output, the triac on the station, you will get a report here and you'll get a report back that you've burnt the station out. And then at that point you have us come out or whatever and we replace the output board from that standpoint. So the clock is pretty informative as far as letting you know what's going on out there. Well, one of the biggest problems we have with controllers like this or other brands is people will set it up once and they will assume that the system is fully automated, it'll adjust itself, and then they never adjust. And I don't care whose system you have, this is living material and this stuff changes. I mean, these roots are growing, they're getting bigger and they're getting deeper. If you have lawns different times of the year, your lawns will have a different root system. You know, when you're coming out of a very wet winter, your lawn roots have been stunted back from the excess of moisture in the ground. So you got to go in there and change the rooting depth, a couple of times a year. So we do run into guys that just kind of throw it in, figure it's all going to take care of it, never adjust. And it works, but you're really not taking full advantage of the potential for both water savings and plant health from that standpoint. So that's about it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So now what we need to get is the data on all the materials input into the system.